Zach obtained his bachelor's degree in nutrition from the University of North Carolina in Greensboro, his master's degree from the University of Massachusetts, and performed his dietetic internship at Yale New Haven Hospital. He is currently a nutrition professor at Daytona State College, owner of Cordell Nutrition Consulting, and podcast host for The Mormon Nutritionist. Zach's interests in nutrition largely focus on the role cultural influence can play in our nutrition behaviors, whether it is location, income, faith, education, or family background. Our culture shapes our behaviors. Having lived in 8 different states and worked with immigrants, refugees, students, hospital patients, and companies, he recognizes that when addressing behavior change, you need to be culturally aware of participants' environment and background. Zach currently lives in Ormond Beach with his wife, identical twin daughters, and 13-year-old dog passenger.
So it's true, I do have identical twin girls, and their birthday was yesterday, so now they're 1. Right? It was probably the cutest birthday ever. They were mermaids, and it was on the beach, so how could you get better? Alright, so yes, my name is Zach Cordell. I'm a registered dietitian, as are the majority of you, I believe. And we're going to start this off with a little discussion. So this isn't just me lecturing at you. This is going to be a little bit more of an interactive participation. So, first, I want you to discuss, like, with somebody sitting around you, I'll give you like 23 seconds, maybe not that long. But what is the conversation that would happen at a kitchen table? What is the feelings that might be there? Who might be there? And is it all happy-go-lucky, or is it a little bit more serious than that? So, like I said, I'll change it. You have like 16 seconds. All right, so 16 seconds, just talk to your neighbor, and then we'll talk.
We have family meals. It's pretty casual.
All right, like 3 more seconds, start to wrap it up a little bit. All right, so what's the conversation that happens at the kitchen table?
How your day was.
How your day was, okay? You're like, did you learn anything in class today? That's like the stereotypical like 1950s, right?
Yeah.
Got the roast on the table and the potatoes. All right, what else? Yes, Tasha.
Just somebody reminded me of the saying the other day, what was the peach and what was the pit of your day?
Oh, I like that. The peach and the pit. Okay, that's a good one. So these are all like nice things, right? Did anybody think like, I don't have a kitchen table? Or like, my kitchen table is covered in bills? Or like clothes that I'm not sure if they're clean or dirty, right? So kitchen tables can be all kinds of things. I do this activity with my students, and inevitably somebody's like, yeah, it's just like really nice. And I'm like, is it like that in every home? And other people are like, I wish it was like that in my home. But Uncle Howard comes in and he wants to talk politics all the time. And I'm like, I don't agree with your politics, Howard. And so I give this example because I want this to be a forum where we have a discussion, where we're open with one another, but we're respectful of each other's opinions too, because I'm fully aware that I'm presenting a topic on being healthy and being overweight to a group of dietitians who we have been taught that if you're overweight, then there might be some issues with this, right? Okay, so there'll be like interchange and exchange with what's going on, but I just wanted to kind of establish that we will be talking with one another, okay? So again, just my background, trained at Yale New Haven Hospital, a bachelor's, master's, host a podcast. Like Christine said, I enjoy how culture influences what we do, because food is influenced by and influences everything that we do. Whether it's your income, whether it's your background, whether it's your living environment, it's everything, okay? And so this is my culture, okay? And I would like to raise my daughters in a world where they understand what health truly is and aren't just trying to chase this ideal that may or may not be realistic to them. And I think that we can all agree that there is some pressures put on people on what they should look like. and how that may or may not be the best option for them. Okay? So up here, I had you guys participate and write down some stereotypes or characteristics of people that might be overweight, obese, normal weight, or just, you know. So I'll read some of these out and we'll see if you guys could agree with me. So we'll start with underweight. Characteristics of these underweight people is they might have an eating disorder, may have a high metabolism, they could be unhealthy, maybe there are bony protrusions, maybe too thin, possible malnutrition, and it hurts to sit, and maybe they have no appetite. So those are some stereotypes of people that are skinny or underweight, sorry. Normal weight is that they're healthy, they're energized, they're health conscious, they're ideal, they have a balance between food and what they do. They're young. Okay, that's a good one. So young people can be a normal weight, but like old people not so much, right? Normal weight people are fit, and then they have a healthy weight. Okay, so that's pretty typical. The characteristic for overweight is they're going to be on a diet, they're unhealthy, they're lazy, they're athletic, okay, potentially. They're disappointed in themselves, they're unhappy, maybe they say the weight snuck up on me, they're self-conscious, and then for obese, they're going to be depressed, they have difficulty keeping up with the children, there's just limitations from all types of things. They're not happy with their weight, they can't fit into booths or airplane seats, okay? Or, this is a really personal one, I'm glad somebody wrote this, is that it's hard to use bathrooms. Yeah, so that's an interesting one. I'm glad that you guys picked that. So, whenever I do this, a lot of times there are the stereotypes that we have with these people. So a skinny person is going to be organized, they're going to be healthy, they might be a little sassy and mean because they're in control and they know it. But with overweight people, the stereotype is often more so that they're lazy, that they're unorganized, that they're unhealthy, that they're out of control, and that they're the funny fat guy, right? That's who they fit into in their stereotype of their friend group. And while that may or may not be true, these are some of the stereotypes that we have. Then the next question is, what is it that the media is telling us about these things? So has everybody heard of the thin ideal? Has anybody heard of the thin ideal? Oh, okay. This is going to be awesome. Okay, so the thin ideal is that if you are thin, you will be happy, you will be healthy, you will be desirable, and you will be successful. And so it's, in order to obtain those things, you have to be thin. And it's kind of an unspoken rule, and to kind of prove that this is an unspoken rule, I did a little Google search, okay? And this is not on my own personal computer, so this is like public access. If you go and Google these things, this is what you are going to find, okay? So the thin ideal for a famous actress. They all kind of look the same, a little white. And potentially at a normal weight. So I didn't want to be biased, so I did guys too. So we have famous actors. And what's interesting in this one is that you have as many obese men as you have women in your famous actor group. Okay, so again, most of these men are going to be fitting into a normal BMI range. So then we go with the beautiful bride, because we all want to see ourselves in the future, right? And so looking at these, again, they all kind of fit the same frame and body type. Then again, with handsome grooms. Similarly, not many of them are going to be overweight or obese. Then we got lawyers, because we want to see if you can be successful in your degree. So these lawyers, again, thinner. Same thing with men. With men, though, you can be a little bit more overweight if you're a lawyer. That's okay. Then we have female doctors. This one was interesting to me because if you look at the female doctors, most of these women are normal weight or like thinner, whereas the men, you can be an overweight male doctor and that's okay, but they're supposed to be teaching people about health, right? And then I did a Google search on diversity because that's a hot topic item right now where we all need to be understanding and diverse in what we are doing in our presentations. And yes, ethnically diverse, that is there, but body diverse, they all still have the same body shape and form. Even these cartoons, right? The guys in here all have like the V cut, and the girls are all like pretty much an hourglass shape, right? But that's diversity. So then I took it to the next step, and I just Googled people in the news. And so people in the news come up, and right here, and most of them, again, are normal weight, and so I thought, well, let's just Google search overweight people in the news. So I Google searched overweight people in the news. Has anybody done this before? Okay, so this is what I found. Before I break this, just look to your neighbor and see if anything sticks out to you in these photos. And I'll give you 7 seconds. What is it that it might be interesting in
Men.
these?
You don't see their faces.
There are no heads.
Oh, gotcha.
Looking at these, right? Half of these people do not have heads. So we tend to dehumanize people, and we'll argue that the idea is that we don't want to embarrass them because they're overweight. So instead, we take their heads away, and we decharacterize them. We just say that, well, this is an overweight person. Whereas, if you go back, all these people have heads. These people, not so much. Okay? So the further pressures come whenever there's advertising. So those weren't even advertising, those were just Google searches, right? But then we have the Victoria's Secret models, which is what the woman is supposed to look like. But there was some pushback in the community on that. And so they said, well, actually, this is the perfect body. Right? If you were able to do all those things, then why can't my body be perfect? And then there's the joke of how do you get a beach body? You have a body, you go to the beach. Right? But there's always the push around summertime that you need to look a certain way. Terry, is that a question?
Can you find those sizes at Victoria's Secret?
I haven't looked. Last time I went, I wasn't. No, I'm just kidding. I haven't.
This was the perfect body. Just the news?
Well, this was the pushback from the body positive community.
Okay.
Right? So they were saying, this is the perfect body. But if you've looked at it, this isn't the perfect body because even these ladies don't look like that.
No.
They've gone through Photoshop, right? And we're all aware that Photoshop exists, but we still think that that's ideal. But even those people don't look like that,
Right.
right? So then we'll move into some statistics on this, all right? So you might not be able to read this, but it says that 80% of women say that images that they perceive of the thin ideal that they see on television, in advertising, in fashion magazines, and in movies make them feel insecure. The idea behind it was that they were supposed to see these pictures of the thin ideal and then desire to be that, but instead it just makes them insecure in their own bodies. What bothers me as the father of daughters is that down here 42% of the girls 1st through 3rd grade want to be thin. They're already thinking about dieting. Whether that's societal pressure, family pressures, any number of things, they still are already starting to do that. And that diet culture is kind of what we're swimming in, is that we all should be on a diet to be healthy. I had somebody tell me that I should be on a diet because I'm a dietitian. Like that. We should talk, because that doesn't make sense, okay? But that's the mentality, is that in order to be healthy, we should be on a diet. Karen.
My daughter was at work eating her lunch and she took 2 snacks. And so finally one day someone said to her, "Are you on a diet?" She said, "No, my mother's a dietitian." And they never asked her a question.
So, but with diet culture, it was very much more focused on women, right? And it's starting to become more so focused on men because the conversation around body image in men is starting to become a little bit more acceptable to have. But at the same time, we're all told that we need to take ownership and dominion and beat our body into submission and tell that we're the boss. Right? So we go to the gym to beat our body into shape because our body is the enemy, when that's not necessarily the case. And like I said, it was focused towards women, that this is how they were supposed to look. And then I don't know if you guys know about the Dorito cut. This is what men are supposed to have. It's supposed to be a triangle, right? Okay, so there are still pressures out there for both sides, but it's just different. So you have the body dysmorphia, and then you have the thin side of things too, okay? We've even felt this in our dietitian setting, right? In our professional lives, we've seen those things too. A lot of people come into nutrition because they're interested in controlling their body, and sometimes that can take the shape of eating disorders, and other times it can just be because they're interested in nutrition. But there are studies that show that whenever people start in nutrition, like freshman and sophomore, they're more likely to develop an eating disorder than whenever they're a junior and senior, and then then at that time they recognize it and they start to come out of it and develop a normal relationship with food. So it's even within our profession that sometimes dietitians might lend themselves to being a little bit more critical of their body than necessary. Okay? So the other thing is that you get pressure from society. How many of you have had somebody look at your plate and say, you can eat that? Or they're like, don't look at what I'm eating, right? Okay? So as a separate story, I was working at the hospital, went into a patient's room with a fellow dietitian who is a larger woman, and we go in and we're counseling this gentleman about how he needs to make some dietary changes, and he looks up at her and he says, why would I listen to you?
Yes.
Because of her body weight. Okay? So there are the pressures within ourselves, there are the pressures within society, and there's pressures from other dietitians too. Okay? To think that maybe I'm not a good dietitian if I don't appear a certain way. Which is silly, because we all know that bodies are different. But at the same time, it's still there, right? So to get back to the percentages of dieting teens, so 50% of teenage girls have been on diets to try to change the shape of their body, whereas 25% of men have done it, just to try to change the shape of the body. And then that includes like things where they will do corsets, or they will do body shapers, things of that nature to change how their body is going to appear. And then, this is what's interesting to me, is that 33% of girls that are at a healthy weight are still trying to diet. Because something is not okay with the way that they look. And then I found other research that shows that they even feel better about themselves when they're on a diet. Whenever they're on the cabbage soup diet, they feel better about themselves having about 500 calories, if we're generous, on the cabbage soup diet than they would if they were just eating normal food. Okay? So, and we all know that self-esteem is going to play a role in the likelihood of developing dieting and food-related disordered habits. So those things all play a part as well. So in comparison to those who are not dieting, this is a list of things that teens that do diet are more likely to experience. So they're unhappy with their weight. They feel fat even if they are not fat, because they have those conversations with themselves. Okay? They have a lower self-esteem, which is ironic, because if they're thinner, then you assume by the thin ideal that they're supposed to be happier, and they're supposed to be healthier and more successful. But that's not necessarily the case. And then they feel less in control of their life and less connected to those people around them, because they're still focused on that weight needing to be a certain thing. So now it's a pop quiz time. And this is all just what your thoughts are. But at what age do you think that 80% of girls have tried dieting?
I'm gonna say 12.
Me too.
I'm gonna say 12.
All right, so we think 12. Is that like a consensus?
Yeah.
All right, so I'll bring it down. It's not 16, not 12. It's 8 years old.
Oh my gosh.
So think about that. Like an 8-year-old girl is thinking that she needs to start to diet. Now, where is that coming from? Is that coming from society? Is that coming from her friends? Is that coming from her parents? They're saying, well, you're getting a little chubby. We need you to grow up and not out. Right? So where is that pressure going to be coming from? And that's something that should be addressed. Now, it used to be that it was 14 years old, and that's whenever most people had started dieting. But in the 90s, it jumped down to 8, and it's kind of stayed that way for a little while. Okay? Now, here's another thing that most people have not considered, is that whenever you show children images, and we all know that advertising plays a role in how we're going to behave, right? But whenever you show children images, what is the likelihood that those images are going to portray people a certain way? Okay? So they showed these kids different movies, or they reviewed different movies that kids usually watch. And 72% of the kids that participated in this study associated being thin with positive character traits. So they were good, they were nice, they were friendly, they were helpful, they were the heroes of the story. Whereas the people that were not, like 3/4 of those people that were the bad guys, were the villains, they were associated with bad characteristics, but they had larger body sizes. So, to kind of drive this point home, how many Disney princesses are there that are overweight? None. How many Disney villains are there? There's more. Not all of them are overweight. Some of them are completely underweight, right? So you look at Jafar, that hip-to-waist ratio is not right. Okay? But you see these things and it's like, oh, I didn't even think about that. But those are the things that are continually pushed out there. So those are the things that our kids are going to internalize. Okay? So this is where body positivity and health at every size comes in. The idea behind body positivity and health at every size is that you should be comfortable in your body. And that everybody who has a body should be comfortable with what that body is. And then the health at every size is establishing those healthy behaviors regardless of what your weight is. Okay? Some of you may have worked with a patient who said, well, whenever I lose 10 pounds, then I'm going to join the gym because then I've proven to myself that I'm really committed and I can pay that money. Anybody had that experience? Okay? So it's like, why can't we start doing healthy things now, but we're waiting until we're skinnier to live the life that we want to live, right? So body positivity is going to be that it is focused on health, and it is going to be focused on establishing those healthy relationships with your body. The kickback that a lot of times the body positivity and health at every size movement gets is that it's obesity promoting, meaning that we're telling people that they should be obese. We're telling people that they shouldn't try to be healthy because their body's just what their body is and big is beautiful and that's okay. And that you shouldn't even try for weight loss because weight loss is the end. But that's not the case. With health at every size, the idea is that you are focusing on behaviors that are healthy rather than simply just focusing on weight loss. And we'll talk about why you don't just focus on weight loss, which I'm sure many of you have experienced in your practice. Okay? But these are the 5 principles behind health at every size. So first, you're going to have weight inclusivity. So you're including everybody in these behaviors to help them to establish what is healthy for them. Then you're focusing on health enhancement rather than just solely on weight loss. And then respectful care, meaning that you understand and see that person as a person. Because everybody has a bias. And whether these were your bias or just the stereotypes of what you assume somebody in that weight group would fall into, we all still kind of have a picture of what we think that somebody that is healthy should look like. Okay? So respectful care is that you will give them the same care that you would give somebody that is at a normal weight. You will give the same care to someone that is overweight or underweight. I mean, obviously addressing what their personal needs are, but you are going to work with them and respect them as a person just as much. Okay? Then eating for well-being and life-enhancing movements. So those in terms are going to be that you are having a healthy diet and that you are physically active, whether that is you like kayaking, you like paddleboarding, you just want to walk your dog, whatever it is that is life-enhancing movements or physical activity for you. Okay? And this is just a definition for them if I didn't explain it clear enough. But these are available for you, and I can provide the slides, I can provide the research, all the sources for you if you would like as well. But again, it's focused on helping the person where they are to establish healthy behaviors, to help them to be healthy, rather than wait to become healthy whenever they reach a certain weight. Okay? The other issue that a lot of times we will bring up with health at every size and the body positivity movement is the BMI scale. Okay? So with BMI, we've all seen some scale like this before, right? Where if you are in this certain range, you're good. If you're in this range, you're okay, but you're about to be bad. And if you're in this range, then it's no good. You need to change because you're on the way to the grave. Okay? And while this can be helpful in an epidemiological setting, there are a lot of things that are missing from this. They don't include ethnicity. They don't include age. They don't include physical activity levels. They don't include what type of diet you are following. They don't include any medical history that you have, which can all influence those things. So if you're just looking at this and you see that somebody's over here in this category, you're like, well, sorry. The treatment for you is weight loss. But maybe they've tried weight loss in the past, or maybe they were just recently diagnosed with PCOS and things just aren't as easy as they used to be. Okay? The other problem with BMI that I run into pretty frequently, and we've even run into it today, is that people that are thin think that they get a free pass because they're at a healthy weight, so they don't have to change anything. Right? We all have the friend that can eat anything that they want to and they never gain weight. And you're like, oh, I wish I had your genes. But skinny people have heart attacks. Skinny people get diabetes. Skinny people die. Like, it happens, right? But we think that, well, they're in the green, so they're good to go. Okay? So whenever I do this assignment in class, this is what the advice my students would always give to somebody in that healthy weight range. So good job. Keep up the good work. You've made it. Meaning that they've got to the good weight, so they don't need to change anything because they're good. They've completed it. The joke is you see a skinny person at the gym and you're like, why are you here? You don't need it. Right? Because that's the weight bias that is in our society. Okay? So the next thing that I bring up is that we do have a little bias to us. You're brought up looking at the research and looking at the science, and you see BMI and you see that increased BMI can increase risk for certain diseases, and you're like, oh my goodness. Yeah, it's not necessarily causal, but you see that there's a correlation there, and you start to think these things. I remember whenever a professor said this, whenever I was working on my master's, and my knee-jerk reaction was, I don't think that. That's not fair. That's not a characteristic of me. But then whenever I started thinking about it, I was like, well, whenever I work with people that have a certain weight, I make assumptions based on past experiences, based on stereotypes, that start to make me think that, well, if they're overweight, then certain things have happened in their life, or certain behaviors have been developed that have helped them to establish unhealthy behaviors, so as a result, they are unhealthy. But this is part of the problem with bias, is that that's not true, right? That's like saying all skinny people deserve to be happy. Well, what about overweight people or obese people? Like, everybody should be able to be happy regardless of what that number on the scale is. So, just looking at this and understanding what our bias can be is the first step to really looking at health at every size, because the knee-jerk reaction when you hear health at every size is like, no, when you're overweight, you have an increased risk for diabetes, you have an increased risk for cardiovascular disease, you have an increased risk for injuries whenever you're doing exercises, any number of things, because you've heard those things, and you might have experienced those things in your practice. But as you start to take a step back and say, well, maybe this is just the way that I'm looking at it, and the research might not show that. Okay? So, with addressing ethnicity in BMI, how many of you, whenever you work with a doctor or you use a BMI chart, you adjust for ethnicity? Yeah?
Yeah, we do for Asian,
For Asian. Okay, so which cutoff do you use, the 28 or the 27?
27.
The 27? Okay. Yeah, so like, some of us might not have even known that there was a difference in the cutoff. But for BMI, it was established for white people. And that's not generalizable to everyone. Okay? So there are limitations to the BMI scale. Though it can be a useful tool, it is not an end-all be-all that this is what you're in and so you are going to die early. That's not what we can say. Okay? The other thing is that whenever we talk about weight gain or weight loss, a lot of times people will lose a lot of weight and they might have hit that normal group where they hit the weight that they wanted to hit and they're like, sweet, I made it, I'm good to go. So I can just like go back to what I was doing, when they don't realize that that's going to add the weight back on, especially if they were on an extremely low calorie diet, because then their body is going to rebound. So the majority of people that lose that weight gain that weight back, and sometimes even more than they had initially had in the first place. So is encouraging that weight loss or focusing on that weight loss really going to be the biggest thing? Because what happens whenever somebody loses that weight and then gains the weight back to their self-esteem? What happens whenever they make that weight loss and they gain that weight back and then they're told again that they need to lose weight? Or they lost a lot of weight whenever they were in their 20s, and so they realized how they could lose a lot of weight, and then they get into their 40s and they try it again and it doesn't work. So these are the kind of messages that we're sending. So with the weight regain, it's just the yo-yo diet. Even though we tell them not to go on a fad diet, and I don't know many dietitians who are like, you know what, you should really go on this fad diet to lose a lot of weight really fast. Okay? That's not the message that we're sending out. But even the research is showing that people will gain the weight back, typically, whether it's a fad diet or not.
It's interesting, a lot of the physicians are telling them, you know, do the sugar busters, or do
Right.
the Atkins, or do, and I get surprised, or do, the keto's the newest one.
Keto's the
And so
newest.
we're trying to get the message to our physicians, say, hey, you know, we're encouraging them to be healthy and eat healthy and know what an eating style is. So we
Yeah.
often say, well, could you ask them about the Mediterranean or follow the plate, and instead of naming a diet. So
Right.
it's a culture, and the physicians I'm trying to, you know, I've got several physicians we work with.
Right, and so that's the thing, is you have to work with the medical team that is around you in the environment that you're in. Because like I mentioned before, we are swimming in diet culture. And like, we might counsel somebody to understand like health at every size or body positivity, but then they go home and they look on the internet and they see social media, or they see the magazine in the checkout aisle and they're like, oh, lose 20 pounds by summertime. Okay, I should do that, right? So here are some of the difficulties with focusing on weight loss. Is one, is it healthy weight loss or is it not healthy weight loss? There's a quick story. I worked with a gentleman in the hospital. I was consulted because it was malnutrition. I go in and visit with him. He had lost 40 pounds in a month. So I'm sitting there talking to him, and he is sitting forward with an oxygen mask on his face so that he can breathe, because he can't lay down because he doesn't have the muscle mass to help to fill his lungs, right? And he can't even sit back in a chair because it's the same thing. But as I'm talking to him about weight loss, I'm like, we kind of want to slow the weight loss down. Make sure that if we're going to lose weight, it's going to be healthy weight, but that we are maintaining your muscle mass. And he looked at me and said, I'm not slowing down. I've been trying my whole life to lose weight, and this is finally working. So how do you counsel somebody that has been told their entire life that they need to lose weight, but not understand that there are different types of weights that you can lose, right? Losing muscle mass is not what most people are searching for. Okay? The other thing is that if you're losing muscle mass and you are not getting adequate nutrients, then that can lead to increased risk for osteoporosis. We've already talked about sustainable behaviors. We've talked about the plateau. Anybody know somebody that's plateaued? Are they happy when they plateau? Right? So they're like, well, what do I need to be doing? I'm already cutting calories. I'm already exercising. Do I need to go exercise more? And they're like, I guess I'll just go exercise more. Or they start to focus on unhealthy behaviors to get that weight loss. And if they're getting the positive feedback about, well, you're looking great, keep up the good work, and they're not eating anything, or they had 3 crackers today, but they're told they look great, like, that's disordered eating that leads to eating disorders. So it needs to be a healthy approach to what we are doing. I'm not against weight loss, but if we are going to focus solely on weight loss, then we're going to be missing the mark with a lot of our patients. Okay? So there's a lot of research that comes out and shows that if you are in the overweight category, you have an increased longevity. So as you get older, carrying that extra weight can be beneficial for fighting off osteoporosis, for providing extra calories for you so that you will be able to maintain and say that you are not able to eat something for a while because your dentures are lost or whatever it is. Like, you have some type of nutrients in your body that you can use for energy. But at the same time, we're still told that everybody needs to be in the specific BMI range of 18.5 to 24.9, right? But the research doesn't necessarily show that. The next part is that whenever people are losing a fair amount of weight, they can be allowing some of those persistent organic pollutants that are in our food system, that are stored in our fat, to enter into our system and start to increase our risk because they can be inflammatory. That can increase our risk for type 2 diabetes. Also, that weight cycling just increases risk for most chronic diseases because of the inflammation that comes along with it. And then we already talked about dieting being a strong predictor of future weight gain. Because if you have that behavior, then you think that you can just lose that weight really quickly. And so you're doing things that aren't going to be sustainable and aren't going to be healthy. And when you reach that weight loss, or you don't, then you give up. You're like, well, forget it. If it's not going to work, then why am I even going to try? Right? So this is some of the perception that happens around dieting and our health. I don't know if any of you have seen this video before. I don't know if you will get to see it now, but we will try it out. All right.
We're working, we're moving, we're in the zone, we're grooving.
Yeah, we think that chocolate is even better than chocolate.
Oh, wait, more! Oh, this is what evil must taste like.
Cookies or something? No, Will, no. Screw it, bring on the end.
Well, but if you work so hard.
Yes.
Okay. Want to eat that?
I'm curvy and I like it. Well, just a tiny little.
All right, so the reason that I share that is because a lot of people look at health and look at dieting in that lens, right? And that's not the only video that's like that. There are plenty of things that are out there that are pushing this idea that dieting is a joke because we've all done it before and it didn't work, but we're going to try it again because we got to get that bikini body, right? Or we've got to make sure that we look good for the wedding, or whatever it is. And so if this is how we're presenting health to people, then maybe we should take a step back and really start to look at it. Because this is the idea, is that if you're overweight, then you eat burgers. If you're skinny, it's because you eat apples. So why can't overweight people eat apples and skinny people eat burgers? Because this is a stereotype that is going across all of these things. So the focus should be on improving the health of what we are doing, okay? This is to show that there is research out here that shows that regardless of weight loss, and even sometimes whenever there is weight gain, if you are establishing healthy behaviors, then you are going to have increased decreased results in your blood markers for disease states. Okay? In a study that just blows my mind, is that they did a study of people for risk for all-cause mortality. So in here they looked at what is your risk for dying if you are normal weight, overweight, or obese. Same thing over here, normal weight, overweight, obese, so on and so forth. If you were to adopt one healthy behavior, one of those behaviors over there, then if you were obese, your risk drops in half. If you were to adopt two of them, it drops by another third. If you were to adopt another one, then it stays pretty level, but if you adopt that fourth one, it drops by another third. And at this point, the risk for all-cause mortality across weights is the same. So again, if you have these healthy behaviors, regardless of what your weight is, your health is going to improve. So if we're telling people that they only need to focus on weight loss, then they're not going to get to this point, because by the time they start thinking they're going to get to weight loss, they get frustrated and they give up on it because it didn't come as fast as they wanted it to. But if they are establishing healthy behaviors that are sustainable, then it's going to be a little bit better for them. All right? So here's the issues. There are problems with health at every size. I completely understand that. One of them is that everybody thinks that you should burn the scales. All right? That is not the case. A scale can be a helpful tool to understand and monitor changes. Okay? The other one is that they think that you should never be able to ask them their weight because that is not a metric of health, and that is not fair. Okay? I don't agree with those things. Those things can be helpful tools. They're not end-all be-alls, and if you're of this mentality saying that you need to burn the scales, then you're giving that scale the same amount of power on the other side of the spectrum, right? So the other problem with it is that they say that with the health at every size and body positivity, it is promoting that people don't know that they're obese, and so they just continue on in doing those behaviors. But this isn't new, and this isn't dependent upon the health at every size movement, because a study came out in 2005 and said the same thing. From a historically black college and university, they had students ask them what they thought their weight was, and they didn't know what category they were in. And it wasn't because of body positivity. Okay? So, with body positivity, people can go overboard, just like with anything. Okay? They can also use it as an excuse because they're like, well, health at every size, I'll preach that all day, but they don't do any exercise, and they don't eat healthy, but they're just claiming health at every size. Right? So, you can do that, and it's not healthful either. But then the other problem is that it becomes skinny shaming, where you're like, well, I've got curves and you don't, so I'm a real woman, or whatever it is. And so it becomes body type against body type, when health at every size is supposed to be health at every size, not just health at obese sizes.
Right.
Right? So that should be the focus of what it is. So the things that we can change are going to be, what are our conversations around weight? What is the respect that we give to people that might be at a different weight than what we are at right now? What is our awareness of our personal bias? And then to encourage people to establish healthy behaviors rather than just to seek after a number on the scale. And I think most of us can agree that that is what we really want people to do. If we can get them to lose weight, that's awesome. But if they can lose weight and that develops anorexia, that's not what we were trying to do, right? So the focus is on long-lasting, healthy behaviors, right? So the questions that you can ask yourself as you go home from this meeting is, what is your own personal bias? Do you look at somebody that is overweight and think, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine doing that. I can't imagine being that big. That's just going to be so uncomfortable, and they are probably just going to develop diabetes next week. Or do we understand that they are all people, and that people have different builds? In the Health at Every Size community, the big picture that's going around is you have a Great Dane and a Chihuahua. And if that Great Dane loses a certain amount of weight, is it ever going to become the Chihuahua? No, it's not. Some people are like, you talking about the Great Dane? But no, I'm just saying that we have different body builds. You look at a Tongan and you look at a Japanese person, they have different body builds. Like, it's just how it's going to work, okay? Then the other one is, whenever we are telling stories, whenever we are explaining health, is it just the white girl doing yoga? Or is it multiple people doing healthy things regardless of what their age, regardless of what their weight is? Like, can you show a family of overweight people that are going on a hike? Or are we all just focusing on like, well, this is an ethnically diverse population that are doing healthy behaviors that are all normal weights? Because we're excluding the people that we are trying to get to be healthy, right? Along with the normal weight people, we want everybody to have those healthy behaviors. And then finally, like, what are our stories that we are telling? What are the examples that we're giving our clients? Is it, well, I had this patient and I helped them lose 47 pounds and now they reversed diabetes. It's like, well, that's great. But what if your patient can't lose 47 pounds? What if they don't reverse diabetes? Is it still going to be better for them to have healthy behaviors?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Okay? So here are some resources for you. Again, like I said, I'm more than happy to share all the sources that I have. But these are some excellent ones. And again, I would love to stay in contact if you have any questions. And we can have a discussion now if we've got a little bit of time. We've got a couple minutes if you'd like. But this is my contact information. You can find me on social media. You can find me on iTunes. You can find me at Daytona State. All right? But here are all the resources that we went through. So it wasn't just me like making this stuff up. Yes.
I really appreciate you tackling this topic because I think as dietitians, we're actually, I find that we are at odds with the weight loss profession as a whole, or the nutrition gurus, so to speak. And they have this, the marketing tactics to
Right.
grab everyone's attention. They're the ones that are, really causing a lot of that body shaming that's
Right.
going on. On the flip side of that, as some of the body positive stuff has come out on social media and that sort of thing, I almost initially saw a lot of overcorrecting
Right.
with some of our nutrition professionals that were saying, eat the donuts, enjoy the donuts, which is sort of going in the furthest direction from the health perspective
Right.
of this. And I think that the way that you have described it really does show that the point is to try to improve health regardless of what the numbers are showing, because we're looking at the outcomes, the health outcomes.
And it's going to depend on who the patient is, too.
Right.
So you can't treat some patient that has had anorexia and is recovering the
Right.
same as some person that has never been on a diet before in their life, but is just trying to be healthy, right? And with some patients, you might need to help them to establish a healthy relationship with food, rather than thinking if I eat chocolate cake, I'm going to hell, right? So like some people will think those things. So it's working with those patients where they are, but it's with the understanding that we are here for health. The problem is it's not as sexy as weight loss.
Oh yeah.
It's not, well, we can shred you can lose 4 pounds or 4 inches off of your waist like that, right? But is it going to stay off? And is it healthy? Like, sometimes that doesn't matter. But what we're moving more into is that people are starting to get sick of that. And they're tired of being lied to and being strung along that they can lose all this weight and that it doesn't stick, right? So they're starting to realize that there is a different way. And so that's where I think the Health at Every Size movement can be something that, as long as we have that in the back of our minds, if we look at it, like, we can address those patients who have that are sick and tired of it. The ones that are still in diet mentality, like, getting them out of diet mentality is not going to be the easiest thing to do. right? But if somebody's like recognize that diets are not going to be helpful and they're ready to get to the point where they want to be healthy, like you can help them to do that. What other questions you guys have?
Does ACE have a website, and who is the founder?
So Linda Bacon is kind of like the big person towards the health at every size movement. And you can go to, where are we at? The size, diversity, and health.org. Sorry, I know that's kind of small. But size, diversity, and health.org are where you'll find a lot of the health at every size principles.
And so how did they get the word out, and where are they? Like,
She is out of the University of California, but I don't remember which one. But she's out in California. And so they disseminate the information that way. These, they publish in peer-reviewed journals. They try to present at different conferences. They presented at the academy. So they're working to get that message out. But again, a lot of times it's the health coaches that are starting to do this rather than dietitians.
and then I have another question. So, you know how in the beginning, like, when you were Googling images?
Yeah.
So you had, at the end, say, well, maybe we could have images of, people who are struggling with weight doing healthy things.
Sure.
Where do you find those images? They're hard to find.
So they are hard to find,
Yeah.
but if you look for them, they are there. I'll tell you. So one of my favorite is a yogi out of Durham, North Carolina. Her name is Jessamine Stanley. She is a large black woman, and she does yoga better than anybody that I know. She is amazing, right? So I'll include that in my slides whenever I talk about it with my patients or with my students. You can find it, but you have to go to look for it. That's the thing, is if you look for somebody that is overweight and exercising, even then you're gonna find a discrimination where it's like this overweight person, I can't do it anymore. That's still going to be there. But because you're aware of it, you can find those things. I promise you, you'll find them. I go look for them. And if you can't, let me know. I'll send you some. Yeah.
So I work for a healthcare company, so our message for our weight management class is called Eat Right, Move Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to take the weight loss component out of it and just focus on healthy behaviors with
Right.
the healthy plate and the fitness.
Yeah.
So my challenge is this, we run a DPP, Diabetes Prevention Program.
Yeah.
We're trying to get the accreditation for that, and we've got to have our folks meet a 5% weight loss in a year.
Right.
So we've educated maybe 40, 50 people. We prevented 99% of them from converting to diabetes, but can't meet that 5% weight loss.
Mm-hmm.
So we look at their fasting sugars, we look at their A1Cs, and it's fantastic because even though it's a weight loss program, it's more about disease prevention or diabetes prevention. So the hardest thing is the CDC is telling us, you've got your people to lose weight before you're accredited, and we're like, but we're making a difference in these people's lives, and it's
Right.
nothing to do with weight. It's all about prevention, and we go back and forth with them trying to get that.
Right, and it's because there's been such a big push about BMI to be like the gold standard, and we all know that it's not the gold standard. It's a helpful tool,
Right.
but it's not the end-all be-all. Like you said, you have the measures for A1C. You might have the measures for insulin sensitivity. It's all denoting here that things are a lot better than they were.
Right.
But because that number on the scale hasn't changed, I think that in the future they're going to start to look at those things and realize that you can use different metrics for different results.
And there's nothing like when a person reaches their goal weight, and I'm like, all right, let's step up the physical activity, and they're like, what?
Sure.
150 minutes? You want me to do more? And it's like, I remember in the 90s when they said an hour a day for adults.
Right.
And we were fitness professionals like, oh, great, and all these people are like, we don't even have time to go for a 10-minute walk.
Sure.
So we're trying to get people to be more active, and that's our focus.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And that's the thing is like you said, you have to educate the medical professionals you're working with,
Yeah.
because they've been ingrained with the BMI as well.
Yep.
And they've been ingrained that weight loss is the only solution to this. But if the research shows that you can lose the weight and gain it all back, which is what most people do, then is weight loss really the solution? Not necessarily. Question? No? Okay.
There was just a meme, and it says, be a dietitian so I can help people eat healthier, and then it's a person eating a bunch of donuts. So
Sure.
it's kind of made me laugh.
Yeah. All right. If there's any other questions you guys want to ask me later, I'm more than happy to talk, but thank you very much.
Okay, very good.